Hi.
What's up, guys?
Yeah, I'm not nervous at all.
Yeah, you get nervous about things, right?
Absolutely. Don't you?
No.
Never?
No.
I do.
What's the last thing you were nervous about?
Baby being born.
Oh, yeah.
Other than that, and that was a long time ago. But
I was nervous
When you were
last
born,
night.
you mean, as a baby?
in the cord around my neck.
Last night I was at a bar and this lady left her purse and went to the bathroom, and I was like, I wouldn't trust me with that. I don't even steal. I don't want her to just lose something and then blame me.
Yeah.
So no.
So you're making up scenarios in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember we were at Ohio?
I made her count her money.
We did a show in Ohio State, and the girl stole my jacket while
That's
we
right.
were at the bar.
That's true.
And then turned out the bartender was her friend and covered up for her and wouldn't turn her in.
Yeah, they wouldn't show us the footage.
Yeah. For real.
They
It was like,
no,
what?
seriously, yeah.
And he goes, yeah, I shouldn't. I'm like,
I shouldn't show. I would think you guys do what's got to be one of the most nerve-wracking high-wire acts in comedy ever. Are you freaked before the show, or does that bother you?
It bothered in a different way than it did. Like
Yeah.
initially, it freaks you out because you just want it to be good.
yeah,
Right?
when you start, it's an existential fear. You're like,
Yeah.
can I do this? Am I going to be terrible at this?
Right.
And my life's going to end, and I'm going to be the worst person ever to ever do this. That's your existential fear.
Yeah.
And then after a few years, when you start settling in, your fear is more, I want this week to be good. Is there anything that's going to stand out? Is it going to be funny? But it's not like you don't feel like I'm going to be the worst person in the world anymore.
No.
Just top 10.
Chad just went, no. But see, here's the thing. You're the only people doing comedy that get reviewed every show. I mean, there's massive reviews that go out. They don't do that for any of the late night shows or anybody else.
No, yeah, it's like playing for the Knicks.
God, review. We talked about this too, but the idea having to review comedy is such a weird job, and it's a hard job. But also,
Is it?
it seems hard to do it well,
Yeah.
based on reviews that I've read. But it's like you reviewing. Imagine like watching comedy when you were young and then reading a review of it,
Yes.
of like a Chris Farley
Yeah.
movie. Like you just who's reviewing this stuff, and who's funny that's also doing reviews? Like I can't
I don't
imagine.
remember that when I was a kid. I don't remember like watching Family Matters and then reading about here's why Urkel is problematic.
Yeah.
all of it,
Okay.
because of
I don't
all
know.
of it.
No, yeah.
But you guys also get reviewed with 40 years of other
Yeah.
performances every single week. You know, the name Chevy Chase will still pop up in a review about last week's show.
Yeah, it's
Right.
strange. The strangest part is not that Chevy Chase, it's that it'd be like a 27-year-old writer that's like, Chevy Chase would have never, like, how do you remember Chevy Chase? It's like 45 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, you in our building too. There's photos of all the old, all the old cast members, old sketches, and when you see a photo, it's super intimidating because you're like, oh, that looks so classic. But then when you watch old episodes,
Yeah.
they're very hit and miss.
Yes.
And it actually
Of
makes you
course.
feel better because you're like, oh yeah, it's still the same as it was.
Yeah.
Like there's maybe one or two good things, and then there's others that are, really like, and that's a good week. You know?
Yeah, you only remember like the best things,
Sure.
After a while, you just remember the best stuff and the worst stuff and everything. Like it was a 90-minute show 40 years ago, so there was a lot of stuff that wasn't good, but you remember your favorite. People think that those episodes were like Will Ferrell's best stuff, but it was like, I'm sure there was clunkers.
Sure.
It was
Yeah.
fine.
Same thing with Letterman's show from the 80s. Go back. Everybody always idolizes that.
Yeah.
And if you go back and watch it, he was still really figuring out a lot of stuff,
And that's part of the fun. I think that's probably why people, when they first saw Letterman in that era, loved it because they watched someone figure it out.
Yeah,
And as a
that's
comedy
true.
fan, that's really satisfying. Like, Lorne talks about how people are always the funniest they ever are on SNL. And even people who have huge careers after, like a Will Ferrell or Tina Fey, there's something about seeing people discovering them for the first time, even if they're raw or on a show like SNL. Maybe not everything works, but you're invested because you're like, no one's ever seen this person before,
Which is why a lot of SNL fans are, their favorite their favorite seasons are always kind of what do they say, like 14 or whatever, like when
you discover it, right?
Yeah, when you discover it, that's the best, and we can never compete with that. That's in your head when you start, but after a couple seasons, you start to just do what's funny and what you think is funny and what's of the time, and then you just let it shake out the way it shakes out.
But you guys had the other thing that you have to work on your own chemistry together, and that's not an easy thing.
Well, that's especially hard on SNL because we're not on camera together.
Right. Or rarely,
we
except
start,
for the first shot.
Yeah, the first shot is when we're together. So you have to establish a chemistry in a single, which is very, very hard to do and tricky to figure out. But, like on a feature, like you and Leslie, you guys are together. You're talking directly to each other. So that chemistry can almost be instant. But with us, we kind of have to pick up where the other one leaves off. And it's a little bit trickier to do.
Finish each other's sentences.
Sentences. I was a little late on that.
Yeah. And
I was going to say, too, like for our show, too, like when Chris Rock came back, he was like, SNL is the last place on TV where you can fail, which is an interesting thing because normally things aren't live and our show is live. So there are sketches that die or jokes that we tell that die.
Right.
And there's no editing it. That's just out there. And there's something thrilling about seeing people also fail that, you wouldn't necessarily see.
Oh, what a lonely feeling. Yeah. When you tell a joke that bombs and that camera leaves you. You're just sitting there listening to another guy tell a funny joke. And that camera comes right back on you and you're like, this joke's going to be worse. That's why it's second. Oh.
But now that's the thing difference now. And now it's so fun. If like I tell a joke that bombs and it cuts to you, you're so excited. Like you're smiling when it cuts to you because you just know I bombed.
And that's where you find the chemistry.
Right.
So it's like, that's where you got to kind of cheat and find that chemistry. So when you tell a joke or whatever, whether it works or not, or if I don't like the joke or if I love the joke, when it comes back to me, I got to let the audience know that I heard the joke too.
Yeah.
That we're together. That's how you know when you're watching TV that we're in the same studio because we're never together otherwise.
Well, it's like comics watching each other in the back of a comedy club, and you're often laughing at when the comic's dying. That's like the funniest. You would rather because first of all, it makes you feel better about yourself, but also it's just fun to watch. You don't get to see once you know someone's funny, and then watching them fail is really funny.
Yeah.
I always think the other thing too that's so tough in your gig is sometimes there'll be, as it switches over, the audience will have a beat before they get the joke sometimes, like if it's particularly clever. So when you switch over to the other person, you might even be starting and they're like, oh, now I get that joke,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you can sometimes help each other by waiting a second and letting them catch up or hurt it either way.
Yeah. Now, writing this, are you writing all week? Do you realize that everybody is doing current event material, unlike when the show, started in the 70s?
Well, the weird thing, it's not even so much that everybody's doing current event material on TV. It's that everyone's doing current event material in life, like in the world, on Twitter, there's so many times I'll say a joke and I'll be like, oh, I tweeted something like that. And you're like, all right, man, I don't follow you. I didn't know. It's like you have to compete with the whole world's opinion about the same issue and everyone's got a joke for it. And there's so much comedy that you kind of have to find a way to make it stand out or make it at least feel fresh. And the easiest way is just kind of being honest about what it seems like to you, because then they can't accuse you of lying. We could have the same idea, but you can't accuse me of lying if it's true.
Yeah. And also you have to watch out for writers because a lot of them have been accused of reading people's tweet. I think that happened to Conan once, that, maybe one of his writers was just getting a little lazy.
Or it's unconsciously in your brain from seeing it somewhere. In the long run, I always think someone proves their reputation in the long run. Like if there's one blip where something happened, but they're generally never doing that, then it doesn't really matter. If there's some weird pattern of it, then I think obviously that's a problem. But everyone has some moment where you say something that you didn't even realize was from something else or whatever. That's what happens as a comic.
I'm sure Robin Thicke just maybe stole Marvin Gaye's thing, and
he just so
happened to have the same exact melody. Who knows?
Well, he got a good summer out of it, though. You got to give him that. He had one hell of a summer.
Yeah,
before
right.
the receipt came in.
Well, if he had a second huge hit, you'd be like, okay, now it's
Now, for you guys, I would guess, Colin, this was a career path for you from the beginning because you did, Harvard Lampoon and stuff. This had to be an idea. But Che, this has to feel crazy to you that you ended up getting this gig, right?
Yeah, it's because of Colin too. Like I knew Colin from stand up. We used to do stand up shows together. In the scene, you do these kind of feature sets at a club. They'll put 5 or 6 random comedians on every night or whatever. And me and Colin would play the same clubs. I think Stand Up New York and the Cellar and
Strip. Yeah,
the Strip. And I remember. I think we were at Knitting Factory, actually, right?
Yeah.
We were at Knitting Factory together, Hannibal Buress' show back in the day, which is weird to say back in the day already, like 5 years ago, but the world's changed. And he's hosted a show, and we did a show together, and he messaged me. He was like, hey, would you want to come in as a guest writer? And I came in, and it worked. Like, it was just, I never thought I could do it or whatever. It wasn't something I was shooting to do because I didn't write sketches. So I didn't know. Once you see the like, now that I know the bones and the anatomy of the show, I could understand why you would bring in a comedian that's never written a sketch before. Because I know like what's necessary to kind of make that show. But then I was like, I thought you'd have to be, a completely polished sketch writer.
Yeah, but the reason that I wanted to bring you in was you were very funny, and you realize when you
never told me that.
Yeah, this is a huge moment. When you start out in comedy, you kind of assume there's probably like 1 million funny people in the world, and then as you get longer in your career, you're like, I think it's more like 50, like at all times, and he was someone that was like, oh yeah, he's just really funny, so. I think now,
48.
Top 48. But it was now you just look, if you see someone that's really funny, you just try to get them in because you just sense they'll figure it out because this is what, if all they do is comedy and that's all they care about and they're funny, you kind of trust that they're going to figure it out in some way.
Plus the show is such a well-oiled machine that if you have a funny idea, if you have bones of a funny thing, there's enough, senior writers and producers there that can kind of figure it out and understands the language of the show to make it work. So a lot of times you just need funny people in there that have funny ideas that can, kind of get the ball rolling.
And new ideas.
And new ideas.
When someone comes in with a fresh perspective and just a different way of going about things, it makes everyone else wake up a little bit.
I was actually the first Black person to work in Rockefeller Center. A lot of people don't know that.
You do get that Jackie Robinson thing. No matter what you do, everyone's bringing it up every time.
Somewhere Al Roker just choked up.
But you would think by 2018 we'd be done with the first Black, whatever
we almost had a joke about that this week about I think Jordan Peele.
Oh, first, because he was the first. Was he the first Black writer to win?
We're done with first Black things, but we're not. We still got like a whole list. We still got a whole Black bucket list of things that we'd like to do before global warming.
I remember when the Oscar, with the year there where there was like no diversity at all at the Oscars, I realized that there were more Black actors nominated the year of the actual Selma march than the year Selma was nominated as a movie.
That's hilarious.
Isn't it crazy?
I didn't know that. That's a good one. You've been sitting on that this whole time, man? That's genius.
I'm just going to guess. Portier? Was it Portier? Is that...
No, it was before him. It was someone else. But does this air? Does this air in 2014? Because this is going to be killer material.
Oh, man.
The thing about Che, and I was a fan of his, of course, but I thought that your voice was so unique that I worried when you got into SNL that maybe you would be kind of polishing off some of that. Yeah.
I thought it is that's honestly a real thing, because you don't, when you inherit a job, like when you're doing a job that's been done at such a high level for so many years before you only feel like to go back to what you're saying, you only feel like you can mess it up, you know what I mean? And you try to do the job that you saw done. You try to do what you've seen. So I would try to do the structure of like Seth or Tina, people that did it extremely well.
Yeah.
And it just didn't fit for me. So it was something I had to learn to say, well, you know what, I got to do what works for me. And that was kind of more thoughtful bits, more longer runs, more kind of getting in depth on one thing and approaching it the way I would do it on stage, as opposed to what I thought people would expect from an update anchor. And that takes a while to do, to have the confidence to do that, for one, and to also take the risk of like, you don't want to get fired because you're more likely to get fired trying to do it someone else's way than trying to do it your own way.
Which is hard. That's counterintuitive when you start out, because, again, you're scared.
Yeah, you're nervous. And also, you love the show. You don't want to mess it up. So you're like, let me do what is expected, as opposed to let's do something new. And
that also, I feel like Che coming along helped me so much, because there was his attitude of like, we have to make it new and shake it up. And I'd also been at SNL for a while, so I think it was more ingrained in me, like, oh yeah, I guess that's how it is. Right. And it was so helpful for him to come and kind of look at it from a different perspective and be like, look, we got to do it our way and make it ours.
Yeah, because it would be easy to do some impression of Seth, because he did it so well.
He did it so well, for so long. He's almost synonymous with update, so it's like you would almost write the joke. You hear yourself writing the joke in his voice, which is that's just because of how good he was. So we had to kind of figure out how to write comedy again in our voices, and what helped me was stand up. It was just like, well, how would I say this on stage, and then just give me that, and that's how I would do it. Neither one of you stopped doing stand up, right? You just no. What, you jump up during the week, even a week that you got a show, or less likely during the week of a show, just because a lot of times you're writing so much, your brain is just fried. Yeah. But sometimes, just to stay sharp, I'll do you guys ever run any of those jokes on stage that you might do, or? Well, I don't start writing jokes really until Thursday, Friday. So I never really have time to. By the time I'm starting to write the jokes, I don't have time to get up and work them out. I don't know. Do you ever? I always wanted to, but then the rest, because we're also writing. We're on producing sketches. So by the end of the week, it's really hard to find a solid hour to go to a club, and then you're also. I've done it a couple times, kind of, but. The rhythm is also so different. Completely different. And so it's sort of hard to get a total sense of it. Unless you can get an idea of, is there a kernel of an idea here that's worth pursuing? But it's hard to get a fully fleshed out rhythm. You also have so much more time on stage than you do on Weekend Update. Like on a Weekend Update, we probably have a total of 5 minutes or something, 8 minutes to really do jokes. So the pace is so much faster. That's another thing that people, I don't think, realize when they're watching it, is that we get like, I gotta cover something in 45 seconds, we gotta cover like a topic in like 45 seconds that other people will get 7 minutes on, and they can kind of go in depth and they can pace and they can milk it. And we're very, very rigid on time because it's a live show and there's other things. I remember one time we went 2 minutes over. Right, it was like 2 minutes over on an update, and like a sketch got cut, like the world. It's like, and you feel bad. You're like, oh my god, my friend's sketch got cut because we laughed at Leslie. That's 2 minutes. It's just 2 minutes. So it's like, a lot of times you kind of got to make sure that the thought is concise and funny, and then when that camera leaves, hopefully they laughed and you don't have that long walk home. It is. It's hard getting into a. But both of you, the writing that you do in your own stand-up feels different than the kind of writing that you do for Update. I mean, for me, maybe even more so than for you, I would think. But a lot more N-words for me. Mine too, actually, and it's become a huge problem. Thank God, I've cleared out some theaters. I mean, for me, it's way more personal doing stand-up. I'm not that political of a comedian. Like I'll touch on things, but. Outside of my job, I find politics pretty boring, and I just don't. It's like when you do it every day, you kind of don't want to do it on your off time. Yeah. Well, you guys have had to deal with something that I don't think anybody else has had to deal with, and that's a president that people are talking about. That people love. Yes, is probably the most beloved, particularly in New York, the most beloved man. But it is constant. It's 24 hours a day. People like you're in the.
you're in a bodega and you just hear Trump. You hear Trump. It's constant
everywhere. It's bizarre.
Well, there was an article at some point that he might be the most famous person in history. Like in terms of how many
Jesus in check.
How many people? I mean, yeah. Well,
Jesus is pretty famous.
Yeah. I don't know what. Now I'm saying it out loud. I'm like, I don't know. George Washington's.
But I'm sure
famous.
he's been on TV more. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a massive amount of things in the media that are just catered to him 24 hours a day, whether it's pro or con. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's also just kind of perfect storm of this kind of guy who demands to be in, if he's the most famous person, I guess Kardashian's second.
Right,
so
yeah.
This is the caliber, this is the scale that we're talking about. It's not like it's him and
Hitler got a lot of press, but
it's,
some of it very unfair.
Fake news.
Yeah.
That was fake news all the way through.
Fake news.
Yeah.
But he demands this kind of attention, and people demand the attention. A lot of it comes from people's own kind of narcissism of, I want to have the Trump joke to end all Trump jokes, and I want to have the Trump commentary to end all Trump commentary. And it's not really just him. A lot of times it's people using him to boost themselves up in a weird way. And it's like everybody, which is kind of bizarre. And as a performer, you kind of see it when you're on stage and you bring his name up and people kind of go, oh, again.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of like not interesting to talk about, but as soon as you hear it, you kind of want to talk about it.
And there's people have put all these expectations on comedians sometimes. We're like, you almost feel like you got to say something that just takes him down.
Right.
I think it's probably going to be voting. I think my sense is it's going to be voting.
It's kind of weird. Like, we'll play schools, like colleges sometimes, together or separate. And I'll have kids and even adults, like people like in the street. Hey man, I just want you to know I get all my news from you guys, and I'm like, oh no, you shouldn't, man. This is a lot of stuff we're making up. Like, don't get real news. But that's kind of what it is. People just kind of look to comedians now as some sort of authority. And we're like, no man, we're just trying to. I will lie. I will absolutely lie. I will lie for a joke. I don't care.
And you both said you guys weren't real like news junkies before you came into this life. Your material was more about your life or whatever.
I definitely followed the news, but it gets very, I don't know. I think there is a lot of weird stuff with the media, and I think people just need to generate stories. I mean, like the New York Times is all the news that's fit to print, but it's the same exact length every single day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's something there. People need to generate stories, and sometimes I get tired of that. It just feels like an endless cycle. But I don't know. Yeah. Then you do this job and you kind of have to.
Yeah, you have to. I think that you guys really found your sea legs and your chemistry together when you started to do the summer weekend updates. I thought that was brilliant idea and perfect for you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It was kind of, I don't know. I think like the year before that we did like these election kind of shows, right?
Yes, that was the year before. Wow, yeah.
That was already 2 years ago.
It was like 6 years ago. Doesn't the Oscars feel like 3 months ago? 6 days ago.
No, yeah, we did those shows, and I think that's kind of where the idea maybe came about.
Yeah, and maybe of shaking it up a little bit, and just the process changed a little bit for the better.
Yeah,
behind the scenes, like that process. But yeah, the summer ones were also two things. One was it was nice because it broke up the summer because it was such a charged time last summer, and it was nice to be back on the air for part of it and not miss full 3 months of news.
Right.
And it just kept us fresher, or like kept us sharper when we got back to the show, that we were more in a groove already.
But it also felt like you guys were immediately looser to me. Like it immediately felt like, okay, they feel less pressure.
Well, you got to remember, it's it was just us. So
Yeah.
we have first of all, we maybe doubled our time in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So we have way more time. Then you can take the time into things that you want to do. There's more acts. There's commercial break. You can kind of reset. You can, like it's a show,
Right.
and so it's a lot more space and it's a lot more room. It's not as rigid as just being kind of in the middle of a show straight through 3 features and then you're out. It's kind of, it's like actual shopping and supermarket sweep. It's a complete difference.
Oh, now I get it. Now I completely understand. I didn't have it at all.
I saw your eyes crossing. They almost pupils hit.
But you guys went and added a lot more pressure with being head writers for the show now.
Well, we didn't add it. Lauren added it.
Hold on.
We didn't request it.
No.
It's weird because we were already kind of doing the job, which is there's only so much work hours, sheer hours you can do, and so we're doing the same number of hours, but now we just have even more anxiety. I mean, that's really the only difference.
Yeah, you get a lot. You get yelled at for more now. Yeah, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't know. You feel more like even on Sundays, and when you're off on Sundays, you're more worried about the show or how it went or thinking about next week. It's really like anxiety. It's less because it's also not your show at the end of the day. It's still Lauren's show.
Right.
So you have to try to just do your best to make it what you think, get it in the shape you can.
There's a lot of things like in the show that's kind of super, not more important, but kind of what, sets the show off. The cold open is very important. The monologue, first sketch out of monologue.
Yeah.
Like those kinds of things are a little bit more our responsibility as far as looking over that we share with Kent and the producers and Brian Tucker. So it's, it becomes that. But for the most part, like you said, we're still working just as hard on the show because we're fans of the show. So we actually do care about it. You want it to be the fun seasons. You want it to be the seasons that people are fond of. And I think these past few years have been pretty good.
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, I think as head writer too, you also, one of the biggest things is you're just trying to lead by example. And like when I started, like Tina was the head writer, and she would write really funny sketches. So you were, it just drove you to get better. And you were always I was always amazed how many jokes she had in every scene she wrote. Things like that census taker scene that I loved with Tim Meadows and Christopher Walken, things like that. There's so many jokes in that script, and it just drives you to get better. And so that's like being a good head writer, I think is partially that, is just showing other writers like, oh yeah, I'm really dedicated to this and I'm going to make this the best I can.
And when I started, Seth was head writer with Jost too. Yeah. And I remember how Seth was kind of like, he was like a sketch doctor. Like anything you had, no matter what kind of humor it was, no matter what kind of perspective it was, he could look at your sketch and make it a little better. Like he could tell you what to do to make it a little bit better. So that's something as a head writer that you kind of want to be able to do for other writers as well, being able to look at it and help them with it.
Well, it's always funny to me because sometimes that's the best thing if you see a Tina, and sometimes if you're young, you're like, oh God, it's like if a young open mic guy goes in, he sees a tell do 15 minutes.
Right, and you're like, how would I ever do this?
Let me out of here.
Right.
Yeah. I can't breathe right now.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's why open mics are nice, because you're seeing open micers. Right. And then you're like, oh, I can definitely do this like that. I can do it.
Yeah.
But I think it's always interesting about SNL how many hilarious people went there and kind of hit the wall, and it didn't work for them. A lot of people had careers after the fact that kind of got chewed up there for a couple years.
If you look at the biggest stars after SNL, probably as many had tough SNL careers as had good SNL careers.
Right.
If you look at the Larry Davids or Ben Stillers or Janine Garofalo's or people that had huge careers after that didn't quite pan, or Sarah Silverman. I mean,
Robert Downey.
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr.
Whatever happened to him? Is he doing? Is he doing anything?
I think it's bad. Whatever it is, it's bad.
Super poor.
Yeah, I think he's super
Famously poor now.
Is that just attitude? You think it's just some kind of acceptance of whether you enjoy your time there or not?
I think it's just when you get there, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, when you start and you're just trying to figure it out, and sometimes it's the time you come in. Like, are there senior people that are there ahead of you and you don't get a shot really, or you just can't quite figure it out, or you're not built for it. I mean, Larry David's probably probably the most successful writer in history, and I'm going with all extremes tonight. But probably,
Mark Twain was pretty good.
No.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Okay.
It's very Trumpian of you, though. It's always the biggest.
I'm learning. See what I'm saying? Like the president. Oh God. Anyway, he's the greatest writer in history.
Oh my God.
But I mean, he didn't work out at SNL, and then created 2, hit shows, and so it's
huge shows.
The Jay Moore book is amazing. A guy who can do impressions and is really, really funny, and just went there and just lost it. It was so difficult for him.
And I didn't even think, when I was as a viewer, I didn't even think of him as not working out on the show. Like when I was younger, and I was like, oh yeah, Jay Moore. I didn't even think of that.
I'm not even gonna lie. Like when you just said that, I was like, really? Like, I thought Jay Moore was
Well, you wrote a whole thing about having panic attacks.
Yeah, gasping for air.
Yeah, just felt like no one liked him and didn't know where he was supposed to drop the sketches off. The whole thing is like a fever dream. And if I was casting that show, I'd probably pick him first. I'm like, that guy can do anything.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird thing. Like I know, like the first couple years where you're there, you get dreams, you get these nightmares that you're like showing up late or in your underwear or stuff like that. You would get these kind of panicky dreams all through.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's after a while, the comedy could be very, very hard, but it's also really easy. It's just comedy. We make it a lot more because bombing is so hard to deal with, and being bad at it is so excruciating. But if you don't mind being bad at it, it's a lot of fun. It really is.
I mean, you just accept that.
Yeah,
you go through horrible swings. You have moments where you're like, okay, I think I've sort of figured this out. I think this is okay. And then you have moments where you're like, I think no one likes me. No one thinks I'm funny. I'm really bad. Like Pete Davidson, like every other week is always like, does everyone hate me? Yeah. We're like, no, we love you. You're so funny. And he's like, I think everyone hates me. Like, no.
Just tell him the truth.
No, it's easier. It'd be easier.
Well, I'll watch Norm do Update, and he'll say something, and it just gets nothing. Like absolutely nothing, and it's delightful.
Yeah,
you can tell he's delighted. He's almost happier that it didn't work.
He waits longer if it doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, because he doesn't mind if he thinks it's funny. It's funny.
Oh my God!
And a lot of times, you kind of got to remember that part of comedy of it's fun. It's just it's jokes. It's fun, and you'll
go back and watch Norm's updates.
I love watching Norm's updates. Yeah,
he had one. Oh my God, he had one at Dresser that got cut after Dress, and it was. I don't know what year it was, but it was something about Woody Allen's new girlfriend, and it cut to the photo, that photo of a Vietnamese girl running naked down the streets, and like that famous news photo. Yeah. And the audience there, I've never heard the reaction. The audience was like, "No! Oh my God! What is wrong with you?" I've never heard a reaction like that.
It's great, man.
I think too that there weren't a lot of people on the internet when he was doing that, and it was only after a lot of people got on the internet that you're like, oh, he was beloved. You know what I mean? Because the papers acted like he was the most hated person who ever.
Well, that's again, as a fan, you don't know this stuff. Like when I was watching him, I was like, yeah, he's the best. And then I didn't even know him getting fired or that there was any weird network stuff with him. You just never know that. You're blissfully unaware.
That's what kind of helps you. Is what people know about comedy is, did it make me laugh or did it not make me laugh?
Yeah.
For the most part. And that's kind of all you can perform for. When you start thinking about reviewers and it takes the fun out of it. You kind of just gotta, you get into it not wanting to be reviewed well. You get into it trying to make people laugh and just having a good time. And I think that's kind of, fun is contagious. When they know that you're having fun and when they know that, you're enjoying it, people want to be in on it. And I think that's what helps it.
You brought up Pete and the fact that you are the two Staten Island guys. I'm
sure Lorne can't believe there are two people from Staten Island on his show.
You don't normally even see two people from Staten Island in Manhattan.
Anywhere.
No, it would be shocking.
No, we're always a little scared.
Yeah.
Unless they're on the back of a garbage truck or something.
Hey.
It's good, solid work, and we need it. We need that.
New York's strongest.
More people die.
That's
Yes,
they're
that's
called.
the name of that.
That's the name.
I've
Yeah.
never heard that before.
Yeah, isn't it cool?
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
And you know what corrections is? Corrections officers, New York's boldest.
That I didn't know.
That's sort of like a little ambitious. I
But
think.
it's also pointed out that more of New York's strongest die on the job than cops or firemen.
What?
Yeah, you're
Is it
more
from stuff
likely.
that's in like
No, you're more likely to be
Black
hit by
lung?
a car. You're
Oh,
more
I
likely.
thought it was like raccoon attacks or something.
That's upstate.
It's very
Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that is crazy.
We'll take that back to Pete the next time.
Hey Pete, you're okay.
he tries to get he tries to get everybody in Staten Island to hate him
Oh yeah.
on the air.
That's the thing is he did a great update about how he thinks
Yeah.
everyone on Staten Island hates him. But I guarantee if we both went to Staten Island, everyone on Staten Island would love Pete so much more still. He'd be like, "You guys suck." And they're like, "Yeah, we love you."
Yeah. Also, there's new pressure because people get invested in your personal life now. Like the media will pay attention to your personal life, which doesn't always happen for just straight comedians. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very. I don't know. It's you get better at blocking it out because I don't know. We both had full lives before this, so it doesn't. I feel like it doesn't quite bother you in the same way.
Yeah, I don't. To me, it's immediately funny that anybody would care about my personal life. So you're
Right.
kind of just like, yeah, okay, you say whatever you want.
Right.
It's weird that you even care.
Well, you're the first person that ever said to me Twitter isn't real, so I don't care what I say there or what people say about
No,
me.
it's not real at all. It's.
I thought that was
Twitter-
hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't care about Twitter.
Yeah.
It's Bitcoin. It's
Yeah.
Bitcoin. It's literally Bitcoin for emotion. It's like.
So like super valuable. now.
Yeah, it's just like it's only valuable because you say it's valuable. I don't know what it is. Doesn't really. I've never seen anybody at a deli buy anything with it. I'm just saying, if you need a sandwich and you got Bitcoin, you're gonna starve. It's the same thing with Twitter. I don't believe in it. It's fine, like whatever. I don't care.
believe in it.
I don't care if I'm trending. You know what it's like? I'm not on Twitter anymore anyway. But you know what it's like? People, Twitter is saying a lot of bad things about you. It's like if you're doing 40 miles an hour in a car and you're driving and you see people yelling at you. And you hear what they're saying about you? Like, no, I'm driving a car. I could care less about what they're saying about
They're saying
me.
there's a baby in the road.
Man, I'll figure it out. That's what I don't care about it.
But I remember in college walking in a car pulled up and someone just yelled, "You're ugly," and then kept driving. And it was the opposite where I was like devastated. I was like, oh no, and it's just so effective. Just like, "You're ugly," keep going. Oh God.
Yeah. So you don't pay attention, or you do?
I don't go. I used to look at things I
Yeah.
used to look at things, and now I don't. I just there was a period where I don't look at all. Now I'll look and I find it more amusing than anything.
Right.
Twitter, I feel like is just. I find it's only if you have nothing to lose. Once you have something to lose, there's nothing to gain from Twitter. But like reviews and stuff, I like if there's a negative review or a negative thing written, I always like imagining the person who wrote it and like what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel better. I'm like, what is this life that
There's
you're going and
too
doing?
much. I always said this a lot of times in school. There's too much. I don't know. We put too much stock in the written word. I feel if anything's written about you,
Saddest thing I've ever heard.
You said this in English class.
I said I knew from a.
It's
It's
for a
true.
book report, but may I just point out?
Whenever somebody starts a sentence confidently with, I read, I'm like, I'm checked out because it's gonna be something that sucks. It's always. It's just like not a. We just because you could write. Look, like people will write something. No one cares who wrote it.
Right.
They just care that it's written. Yeah. So like if you're on a subway and you see a dude and he gets on the subway and he just yells like whatever, I don't know, Donald Trump sucks, and you'd be like, oh, this guy's crazy, and he's got like bags on his feet and straws.
No, he
everywhere.
works for MSNBC.
And that insane person, if he wrote it, you'd like, I read that.
Yeah. I read, actually, I read on fart.edu. Yeah.
If he yells it, you're like, that guy's nuts, and I'm gonna keep walking. You read it, anyway, you don't know who that guy is.
I probably know he doesn't have bags on his feet, though.
Right.
He might.
Yeah, could have him on his hands, too.
He didn't read us about me.
Yeah. Well, what's also funny about that, too, is like, the review on each SNL show comes out about 15 minutes after the show was
Tons
over.
of great classic historical perspective.
Yeah. No one was like listening to a Stevie Wonder album going,
like, not sure about this.
Yeah. You
As
give
he's
it a little
recording
bit, you know?
That was like I remember Ebert, I think, went back a few years ago and looked at his old review of like Dumb and Dumber, and he was like, you know what, I was wrong. It's actually pretty funny.
I told you. I feel like they should give Oscars, like they should do Oscars like the Hall of Fame. Like it should be like a 5 year.
It's got to be out for 10 years.
Right.
Yeah, it's got to be. It should be like you should review 5 years after it's come out. Those movies, because that's what makes. There's so many movies that like win these awards, and then you've never heard or seen them on TV again afterwards. Like, for years and years and years.
There should be something for a movie that you'll watch 50, 60 times because you love it.
Yeah.
And that's very rarely.
The Shawshanks, they'll call them.
Yeah.
That's the award.
Shawshank's on. Did that win Best Picture?
No,
I don't think it was even nominated.
that was-
On every single day. It's like Shawshank, Law and Order, Shawshank, Law and Order. It's it. It's like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
How could it not win all the awards?
Yeah.
One of the best things written about Shawshank was written by a guy with bags on his feet. I don't know why I give him so much
The review
power.
was Trump sucks. I don't think that's related.
I think it was The World According to... No, not The World According... What was the other one? Forrest Gump when he beat Shawshank and Pulp Fiction.
Well,
okay.
All right,
Yeah.
all right. Well, Forrest Gump was good.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll give it. That.
Okay.
Forrest Gump is kind of amazing that got made as a movie, too.
Yeah.
It's pretty strange.
Yeah, it wouldn't get
as
made
an idea.
now.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, now everyone will be throwing rocks at it.
They're like, can we make him smart?
Can we help him?
I don't like Forrest Gump. In my 30s, I stopped liking it just because I hate Jenny so much. I think Jenny was a dirtbag.
Taking advantage of this guy.
She took advantage. If Jenny was the dude and Forrest Gump was the girl, that'd be a much worse movie. That'd be a much worse.
God,
Just some dude that keeps popping into her life. Like,
I
your
have,
brain still broke.
I have never once thought that in my life. And
I
that's
need money
hilarious.
again,
Yeah.
Forrest.
You're kind of slow, but I've got AIDS.
Hey, girl, Forrest, you ever seen a naked body before?
Oh, man, that is hilarious. You would go to jail.
You would go to
Yeah,
jail.
go to
You
jail.
would be a terrible guy.
Who do you guys remember who was the cast when you first started watching SNL? What was the...
Well, I'm the youngest of 7, and like my closest sibling's like 8 years older than me. So they would watch. I didn't get to pick what I watched for like the first 15 years of my life, pretty much, So they would watch, we were a big comedy family. Like they loved In Living Color, they loved SNL, they loved everything. So I think the first sketch I've ever seen was Chopping Broccoli. And I think it was like on a best of. I don't even think it was like an actual episode, but it was like Chopping Broccoli. And I remember they were dying laughing, and I could not figure out what was funny about it. But I was a little kid, and ever since then, I kind of wanted to watch it because they loved it so much, and I just wanted to be older, so I wanted to kind of get it. But I think when I first started to really, really like it was like the, I say like Tracy. Well, no. The Norm years. The Norm years with
And
like
Farrell,
and Farrell,
and
like
Tracy,
yeah.
and
Well, maybe even like
Or
right
no,
before
but-
Tracy.
yeah, you're right. On that too, I think, which was
Yeah, I
still
think, like,
maybe the end of
95,
Sandler, Farley,
94.
right?
Yeah.
Meadows, Hartman's probably gone, something like that. But
Yeah,
that-
like that's
that
when I
era.
started to like really get into it.
And that show, which everybody likes, you found out when you read it later, all those guys were always on the brink.
well, that's the crazy thing. Like I had like I had to accept something at the Critics Awards for the show. I did not win an award. But I was there with, it was all critics, and I was like, I remember reading the reviews of that era, and that was like the headlines that were like Saturday Night Dead.
Yeah.
Like, this is the worst it's ever been in history. And then you look at the cast, and it's Sandler, Rock, Farley,
Yeah.
Spade.
Yeah.
Tim Meadows, and you're like, that's an amazing. I mean, that's one of the best cast. I mean, still like even Hartman and Dana Carvey. You're like, how is that not the best? And this was getting the headlines, worst cast. The show's over. So that makes you feel better because that's like our heroes,
right?
And it, like you said, it does sometimes take years. But was anybody thinking, oh, Sandler is going to turn around and be the biggest, one of the biggest comedy stars?
Well, probably NBC wasn't thinking.
Yeah, NBC wasn't thinking that at all, right?
No, but also, by the way, that's again, it's probably a thing that then motivated him to be like, you know what, like, fuck you guys, we're gonna figure this out. I don't know if I can say that. But...
Oh, you can.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can say fuck this whole time.
Yeah,
we've been saving it up.
I mean, not over and over, but yeah, you can.
Sitting on like a fuck bubble in my stomach. Like I can't wait to get out of here so I can say fuck. I didn't know that you could just say it.
Yeah,
you were gonna yell it when you got outside.
I was just gonna scream it in the elevator.
Remember the pitch that you got where you could be uncensored?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Ask all the questions again. Start it over.
Yeah. I just also want to bring this up. The fact that you know Lorne and see him on a regular basis is almost kind of odd because he's a guy that's moved into myth right now. It's almost like the idea of Lorne more than I think Hugh Hefner had that kind of vibe, but it's very rare that people have been elevated the way Lorne has.
I totally agree with that. It's very strange, but he's like a dude that loves comedy. Like at the end of the day, it's that's what makes it so cool. It's like there is that mystique about him, and we all see it in starting there. But he's like a dude that loves comedy. He's a dude that loves talent, and he makes this like he loves this show. So it makes you want to love the show. So it is kind of weird.
Hey, when he saw him the other day, I was like, how's it going, Lauren? He's like, me? I'm doing great. He's like, my legacy's pretty much fine. Yeah. He's like, how about you? Are you okay?
Yeah, he's right. He's right.
Like,
he's cemented it.
Like he knows that he's Lorne.
Yeah.
And he'll let you know that he knows that he's Lorne. But it's also kind of, he's also just like some dude that loves comedy, which is kind of dope.
But he was able to ride this thing about 10 times longer than anyone was supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, 10 times longer than I think he thought he would ever do it. I mean, I think he thought after the first 5 years, like, yeah, we did it. I'm good. And then I think he really just missed it when that's why he came back. I think he's like, this is a thing that I really love doing and I'm good at doing. Like, why not continue to do this and find a new way of doing it, like a new group? And it keeps him so young. It's like he's bringing in new people, new ideas, and working every day, like going to work every day. You see him versus some of his peers, and he's so much sharper and healthier because he's got young people around that he's like, taking their blood and drinking it.
But it is true. That all happened with stand-ups, too. Like, you find out, like, when Joan Rivers was doing one-nighters after one-nighters, and then when she died, they said she had $150 million. Like, you're kidding me.
Wow.
You know what I mean? She's playing Indian casinos on a Tuesday,
That's from selling all that glass jewelry.
Yeah. She did move a lot of that stuff, too.
I think the hardest thing in the world, in show business, I'll say, is being consistently funny. So like to have a comedy show on for over 40 years is just insanity. Like any other show that lost Will Ferrell or lost Tina Fey or lost Eddie Murphy or lost, John Belushi, whoever, it would be done as soon as their funniest person was off of it, and to be able to replenish that 10, 12 different times.
It's the Yankees. It's the Yankees.
It's
at the end of the day.
amazing. With comedy, it's amazing. It's not as cut and dry as baseball even, like it's so hard to do. So it's kind of weird to watch.
There's also I think the instinct that's kept it alive too is the instinct to go new, which is good. Like I think so many people, it's amazing that agents pitch people to come on the show, like to be cast members, and they'll say, oh, it's the next Will Ferrell, or it's the next Kristen Wiig, it's the next Amy Poehler, and the reality is you don't want the next version of those people. You want the new Kate McKinnon, or you want the person that you haven't seen that's going to come out and do it in a whole different way. So it's people think in those terms. I think Hollywood tends to get in those terms of like, it's this meets this, but the reality is you want someone that surprises you.
Yeah. People that would say that wouldn't cast Leslie. and they'd be way off.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of what's dope about the show is that we can see it and like, oh yeah, that one. And then she's going to do what hasn't been done on the show.
Right.
But it's really hard to get people to understand something that they've never seen before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're going, but that's untested. Leslie will not work because she doesn't fit any mold that we have.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It's like it's really one of the best stories ever. You know, like that that she started in stand up with Chris Rock. She was a garbage woman the day before. Never been on a stage. Hit by Lorne's car, and then he had to put her on for blackmail.
It's a beautiful story.
It's a beautiful story.
It's actually a movie I want to see now. Yeah, no. I really think you guys could write this up.
It's maybe trading places. Yeah, I don't know, but it is. It's you take risks. I mean, Lorne still does take risks, and even sometimes there's things he does that I'm like, wow, I don't know about that, and it works out. Like he's got a good track record. I
think one of the most amazing things about going to see SNL live is all those moving pieces, like right up to the last second, they're bringing sketches out. It's like the most show business thing that we have. It's so old school, Sid Caesar in that.
It's everything together. It's like theater, like New York theater plus like old school television. It's done in an old radio broadcast, where Toscanini had his orchestra into the radio. I mean, it's so old school showbiz in a great way.
And when you're working and you're going back and forth and there's celebrities just hanging around and you're just like, you don't care. I remember one time, I think Solange was musical guest, and like Jay-Z and Beyonce is just like standing in the doorway, like in the hallway, and I'm trying to get to cue cards. So I got like 2 minutes to read the jokes before, and I'm like, "Could you guys move?" And I'm like, it's like, no, and it's like as I'm walking, I'm like, "Did I just tell Beyonce and Jay-Z?" But they move because they're like, "Oh yeah." And you're like, "Did I just tell them to move?" Like, was I rude to Beyonce? And
it would be really great if you became an enemy after that. That they set up to ruin you.
And we have a big yeah. No, it's such a weird thing.
Like Robert Kraft from the Patriots was in the studio. The white Jay-Z was in the he was in the studio, and I was about to. It was like Deflategate stuff with the Patriots, and my first joke was about the Patriots, and it was like, and he was lit. He was the only person I could see.
Yeah.
I looked up and I was just like, oh shit, and then you have no choice. It's like, and we're going, and you're like, hey, and then you're like looking out of the corner of your eye.
Yeah.
You're like, don't cry.
That's something that's weird too. That happens all the time. Like you'll just be about to go on, and then you'll just look, and it's like, oh shit, that's Steph Curry, and he's just watching you like. I wasn't.
And then suddenly you're thinking, is this what Steph Curry finds funny? I want to make him laugh.
Oh, it's the weirdest job in the world, isn't it?
It's strange.
It is really, really strange.
The live part of it is really strange because every other show, basically, if there's some weird screw up, you can edit it, or you can, and being truly live and just reading things as they like cue cards as they come is like a very thrilling experience, but also kind of terrifying.
Well, you had a story where you needed to cut time out of a sketch and you had to cover it.
I had to literally physically put my hands over part of cue cards so that it wouldn't read it, so that we would pick up, so that it wouldn't just go to black in the middle of a sketch.
Yeah.
Like just you have things like that at the end of the show sometimes because it's live and there's no way of fudging it.
Yeah, so like if you write a sketch and they need time of the show, like sometimes like your sketch might be 3 minutes, 30 seconds, and they're like, we need a minute out of it. We need to be 2 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever, and you have to go in the control room, and then you have to go to cue cards, and you have to make sure that the lines are out just to make. So sometimes if you're watching the show and you'll see a sketch and you'll be like, well, that ended weird. And it's like, because we had to cut a minute out of it 5 minutes before it went on. It happens a lot, but that's another thing that the reviewers don't mention. They don't know that, you know what I mean? They just you're not. So it's harder to. That's another reason why it's weird to read reviews about the show, because they don't know a lot about the show.
Right.
But it's not just you guys feeling the pressure. That entire crew
feels
that pressure.
Yep.
I mean, you'll see those sketches come together 2 seconds
Yeah.
before it's on air.
Yeah.
And those cue
They're
cards,
putting
that
up
can't be an
walls, yeah.
easy
No.
thing to sit
No.
there and know somebody's, because both of you guys have different reflections. Yeah,
right.
rhythm.
And
That-
you also have a host who's not used to the show,
Yeah.
and might not be used to the changes as quickly, so it's a lot of moving parts.
Dude, I always have this theory, and I never tested it, but sometimes I think people that are the furthest away from comedy make some of the best hosts. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of time there's a funny person, maybe we expect them to be so funny, but there's that. I remember the first time Barkley came on.
Yeah.
You guys have had him on, 4 times now?
Yeah.
I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Just because he came from a whole different angle.
I have a theory about that as well. I feel like a lot of comedians, when you do when you do comedy for a long enough time where you're able to host a show like SNL where you've been that successful, you kind of know what works for you, and you have a process. Like every comedian kind of has a formula because you know what makes you funny, and a lot of times it's hard to just say, you know what, you write it, I'll say it, as a comedian, because you don't trust as much. You kind of trust your opinion more so than you'll just trust the show and the process of the show. So it's a little bit harder with comedians because they're already kind of sure as to what they find funny.
Oh, it's interesting.
With someone that doesn't do comedy, they're like, just tell me what to say. I'll say it. I just don't want to mess up.
Right.
So it's a little bit easier that we could kind of just do what's funny or make what's funny, and they'll just deliver it because they don't have any choice. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, if they're a good performer too, like they're a straight actor, they're going to give you a great performance.
Right.
So if you can figure out how to just write something funny, they're going to really commit and do it well.
It's kind of that Leslie Nielsen kind of theory of comedy where you just play it straight down the middle and we'll write what's funny. And the straighter you play it, the funnier it'll be. Yeah.
Do hosts come in? Could you tell pretty quickly of a guy who's like, he's not going to get the rhythm of what we're doing here? Can you?
Or she can be terrible at it too.
I need to be woke. That's me. I'm still getting woke.
It's the 90s, Ron.
Yeah. Hammer time.
It's hard to tell. I've been wrong a lot. Like I've seen some like on a Wednesday reading, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be rough. And then Saturday it just comes together right when it's supposed to. That's kind of the magic of the show. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's great up until it's not, and then you're like, well, that's rough. But you have one the next week, so it's like.
Well, and some people are good. Some people are good at reading, cold reading, or reading screen. Or you're reading 40 or 50 scripts. So some people are really good at that, and others are really bad. But they're great performers when they finally get, or
once they're locked in.
Yeah, some people are great actors and they're sort of just marking their lines or going through it, but they're going to go through a whole other process before they really do it on air.
Is that another Lorne job? Is that something that Lorne is like?
He has to. That is one of his jobs. Is really to sense what kind of person that person is, and to know and anticipate. Oh, this is not where it's at, but it's going to get there. Or if Melissa McCarthy's hosting, there's certain things that she maybe writes. And she knows what they are, and when you're just seeing them on the page, you don't quite know what it is yet.
Right.
But he trusts her to know and have a whole performance element that's not there at the table read, and then that sketch ends up killing.
Yep.
So what happens
Perfect example.
What happens after Lorne steps down? Is there an heir apparent? Is there somebody that can do this, or
I don't know.
Does this fade away and we just end this thing?
We finally just end this thing.
Do we all rest?
We finally have a Saturday where we just sleep.
No, I honestly can't think of a world where Lorne's not doing SNL. Like it just doesn't. I can't even fathom. I really don't know what would happen.
Yeah,
whether I'm on there or not, I don't know.
Yeah, there's no plan. There's no. He's keeping it out. Yeah,
no.
There's
None
no.
of
I
us
just
have
can't.
any plans for life if he's not here.
Do you guys let yourself think post SNL career? Do you think what you'd want to do next, or is that too?
I'd like to meet my kids.
Well, they're here today.
Oh no! It's a sneak-up show.
Hey, you guys are fantastic. Thank you so much. Their show comes on Saturday nights, 11:30 in the East. Michael Che, Colin Jost. So good, guys. So much fun. Thank you so much.